They came for Citra the following day. Scythe Curie had gone to the market, and Citra was doing what was expected of her. She was practicing killcraft with knives of different sizes and weights, trying to remain balanced and graceful. There came a pounding on the door that made her drop her larger knife, almost stabbing her foot. There was a moment of déjà vu, because it was the exact same sort of pounding that came in the middle of the night when Scythe Faraday had died. Urgent, loud, and relentless. Then she left the larger blade on the ground, but concealed the small one in a pocket sheath sewn into her pants. Whatever this was, she would not be unarmed when she answered the door. She pulled open the door to reveal 2 officers with the Blade Guard, just as there had been that terrible night, and her heart sank. Citra Terranova? One of the guardsmen asked. Yes, I'm afraid you'll need to come with us. Why? What's happened? But they didn't tell her, and this time there was no one with them to explain. Then it occurred to her that this might not be what it seemed. How did she know that these were really Blade Guardsmen at all? Uniforms could be fake. Show me your badges, she insisted. I want to see your badges. Either they didn't have any, or they didn't want to be bothered with it, because one of them grabbed her. Maybe you didn't hear me. I said, come with us. Citra pulled out of his grip, spun around, and for just an instant considered the knife sheath on the side of her pants, but instead delivered a brutal kick to his neck that took him down. She coiled, prepared to attack the other one, but she was an instant too late. He pulled out a jolt baton and jammed it into her side. Her own body suddenly became her enemy, and she went down, hitting her head hard enough on the ground to knock her out. When she came to, she was in a car, locked in the back, with a splitting headache that her pain nights were struggling to subdue. She tried to lift a hand to her face, but found her hands restrained. They were steel clamps cinched on both hands and connected by a short chain, some awful artifact from the age of mortality. Yeah, handcuffs. She pounded on the barrier between the front and back seats until finally one of the guardsmen turned to her, his gaze anything but peaceful. Do you want another jolt? He threatened. I'd be happy to give you one. After what you did, I wouldn't mind turning the voltage into the red. What I did? I haven't done anything. What am I being accused of? An ancient crime called murder, he said. The murder of Honorable Scythe Michael Faraday. No one read her rights. No one offered her an attorney for her defense. Such laws and customs were from a very different age. An age when crime was a fact of life, and entire industries were based on apprehending, tying, and punishing criminals. In a crime-free world, there were no modern precedent for how to deal with such a thing. Anything this complex and strange would usually be left for the Thunderhead to resolve, but this was a Scythe matter, which meant the Thunderhead would not interfere. Citra's fate was entirely in the hands of High Blade Xenocrates. She was brought to his residence, the log cabin in the middle of a well-kept lawn that spread across the roof of a 119-story building. She sat in a hard wooden chair. The cuffs on her hands were too tight, and her pain nanites were fighting a losing battle to quell the ache. Xenocrates stood before her, eclipsing the light. This time, Xenocrates was neither kind nor comforting. I don't think you realize how serious this charge against you is, Miss Terranova. I know how serious it is. I also know it's ridiculous. The High Blade didn't respond to that. She struggled in the blasted things cuffing her hands. What kind of world would make such a device? What sort of world would need one? Then, out of the shadows, stepped another Scythe. Robed in earth-tone brown and forest green, Scythe Mandela. Finally, someone reasonable, said Citra. God, I can't speak today. Scythe Mandela, please help me. Please tell him I'm not guilty. Scythe Mandela shook his head. I'll do nothing of the sort, Citra, he said sadly. Talk to Scythe Curie. She knows I didn't do this. This is too sensitive a situation to involve Scythe Curie at the time, says Xenocrates. She will be informed once we've determined your guilt. Wait, you mean she doesn't know I'm where I am? She knows we've detained you, says Xenocrates. We're sparing her the details for now. Scythe Mandela sat in a chair across from her. We know you've been in the backbrain, attempting to erase records of Scythe Faraday's movements on the day he died, to foil our own internal investigation. No. If anyone's trying to do that, it's Goddard. Wrongo. No, that's not what I was doing. But the more she denied it, the more guilty she appeared. But that's not the most damning evidence, said Scythe Mandela. Then he looked to Xenocrates. May I show her? Xenocrates nodded, and Mandela pulled out from his robe a sheet of paper, putting it in one of Citra's cuffed hands. She raised to read it, not even imagining what it could be. It was a copy of a handwritten journal entry. Citra recognized the handwriting. There was no question it was Scythe Faraday's. Now she read, her heart sank into a place she didn't know existed in this or any other world. I've chosen in haste, but I was foolish. I felt a need to impart all I know, all I've learned. I sought to increase the allies I have in the Scythedom who think as I do. She comes to my door at night. I hear her in the darkness and can only guess her intentions. Only once did I catch her entering my room. Had I actually been asleep, who can say what she might have done? I am concerned that she may mean to end me. She's shrewd, determined, calculating, and I've taught her the many arts of killing far too well. Let it be known that if death befalls me, it is not the result of self-cleaning. Should my life be brought to an unexpected end, it will be her hand, not mine, that bears the blame. And that could be many people. Not just... Citra found her eyes filling with tears of anguish and betrayal. Why would he write this? Now she was beginning to doubt her own sanity. There's really only one reason, Citra, said Scythe Mandela. Our own investigation has ascertained that the witnesses were bribed to lie about what truly occurred. Further, their identities have been tampered with, and we can't locate them. Bribed, said Citra, holding on to the last thread of hope. Yes, they were bribed with immunity. Which proves it couldn't have been me. It could only have been another Scythe. We tracked the source of immunity, said Scythe Mandela. Whoever killed Scythe Faraday also gave him one final insult. After he was dead, the killer defeated the security measures on Faraday's ring and used it to grant the witnesses immunity. Where's the ring, Citra? Demanded Xenocrates. She couldn't look at him in the face anymore. I don't know. I only have one question for you, Citra, said Scythe Mandela. Why did you do it? Did you despise his method? Are you working for a tone cult? Citra kept her eyes cast down to the damning journal entry in her hands. None of those. Scythe Mandela shook his head and stood up. In all of my years as a Scythe, I have never seen such a thing. he said. You disgrace us all. Then he left her alone with Xenocrates. The high blade paced silently for a few moments. Citra wouldn't look at him. There is this concept I've been studying from the age of mortality, he informed her. It is a number of procedures designed to uncover truths. I believe it's pronounced torture. It would have involved turning off your pain nanites and inflicting high levels of physical suffering until you finally confess the truth of what you've done. Citra said nothing. She still couldn't process any of this. She didn't know if she ever would. Please don't misunderstand, said Xenocrates. I have no intent of submitting you to torture. That is only a last resort. Then he pulled out another piece of paper and put it down on his desk. If you sign this confession, we can avoid any more mortal age unpleasantness. Why would I have to sign anything? I've already been tried and, what's the word? Convicted. A confession will remove all doubt. We should all sleep much easier if you'd be so kind as to remove the specter of doubt. Now Xenocrates finally offered her a sympathetic smile. And if I sign it, what then? Well, Scythe did not grant you immunity until Winter Conclave. Immunity is non-revocable, and even in a case such as this. Therefore, you will be held in an incarceration facility until that time. A what? They were called prisons. There are still a few left, abandoned of course, but it shouldn't be too hard to restore one to house a single prisoner. Then at Winter Conclave your friend Rowan shall be ordained, and as has already been stipulated, he shall glean you. I'm sure, knowing what we know now, he'll have no reservations in doing so. Citra looked so morosely down at the page on the table next to her. I can't sign it, she told him. Oh, yes, of course you need a pen. He reached into various pockets of his gilded person until finding one. As he moved to place it on the table next to her, Citra thought of half a dozen places she could jam it into him that would either render him deadish or at least incapacitated. But what would be the point? There were Blade Guard officers in the next room, and she could see even more on the porch through the front window. He gently laid the pen down within her reach, then called Mandela back in to witness her signature. As soon as the door to the cabin opened, Citra realized there was only one way out of this situation. Only one thing she could do. It might not buy her anything but time, but right now time was the most valuable commodity in the world. She feigned to reach for the pen, but instead swung her bound hands in the other direction, slamming them into Xenocrates' gut. He folded with an oomph, and she sprang from a chair, ramming her shoulder against Mandela, knocking him backward and out the front door. She leapt over him, and immediately a swarm of guards came at her. Now she needed every ounce of her training. Her hands were cuffed, but Bokator was more about elbows and legs than it was about hands. She didn't need to decimate them. All she needed to do was disarm them and keep them off balance. One came at her with a jolt baton that she kicked out of his hand. Another had a club, which missed its mark as she dodged, and she used his momentum to flip him onto his back. Two others didn't waste time with weapons. They lunged for her, hands outstretched, a textbook case of how not to attack. She dropped to the lawn, swung her feet, and bowled them down like pins. And then she began to run. There's nowhere you can go, Citra, called Xenocrates, but he was wrong. Forcing strength and speed into her legs, she ran across the rooftop lawn. There was no guardrail because the high blade wanted nothing to impede his view of this domain. Citra neared the edge, and rather than slowing down, she increased her pace until the grass was gone and there was nothing but 119 floors of air beneath her. She held her cuffed hands over her head, grimacing against the wind and the uneasy feel of the free fall, and plummeted feet first, surrendering her will to gravity, relishing her defiance until her life ended for the second time in a week, this time with what was undoubtedly the best splat ever. This was unexpected and inconvenient, but it changed nothing. Xenocrates didn't even run out to the edge. That would just be wasting time. The girl has a spark, said Mandela. Do you really think she's working for a tone cult? I doubt we'll ever understand her motives, Anacretes told him, but removing her will certainly help the Scythe heal. Poor Marie must be beside herself, said Mandela, to have lived with the girl for months and not known. Yes, well, Scythe Curie is a strong woman, Anacretes says. She'll get over it. He had his guards called down to the lobby. The site of Citra Terranova's remains was to be cordoned off until her unpleasant little self could be scraped off the sidewalk and brought to a revival center. It would have been so much cleaner if she could just stay dead. Damn the humanity rolls. Well, when she was once more pronounced alive, she would find herself in a cell with no possible means of escape, and more importantly, no contact with anyone who might take up her cause and petition for her freedom. Xenocrates went to the express elevator, not trusting his security detail to handle the situation down below. Will you accompany me, Nelson? I'll stay here, said Mandela. I have no desire to see the poor girl in such an unpleasant state. Xenocrates assumed this would be a simple scrape-and-soar maneuver, and indeed, an imbued drone had already landed on the street ready to spirit away what was left of Citra. But something wasn't quite right. It wasn't his security detail surrounding her remains. Instead, there was at least a dozen men and women, all in cloud-colored suits, forming a circle around her. Nimbus agents. They ignored the threats and jeers from the Blade Guard officers, who insisted that they needed to get through. What's going on here? Xenocrates demanded. The damn Nims, said one of the guardsmen. They were already here when we came outside. They won't let us near the body. Xenocrates pushed his way through his security detail and addressed a woman who appeared to be the head Nimbus agent. See here, I am High Glade Xenocrates. This is Scythe business, and as such, you and the rest of your Nimbus agents have no place here. Yes, the law states she must be revived, but we shall bring her to a revival center. The Thunderhead has absolutely no jurisdiction. On the contrary, said the woman, all the revival falls under the auspices of the Thunderhead, and we are here to make sure its domain is not infringed upon. Xenocrates sputtered for a moment before finding mental traction. The girl is not a public citizen. She is a Scythe's apprentice. Was a Scythe apprentice, said the woman. The moment she died, she ceased to be anyone's apprentice. She is now a rather damaged set of remains that the Thunderhead must repair and revive. I assure you that the moment she is pronounced alive, she will be fully under your jurisdiction once more. A team of revival workers made their way from the ambudrone and began to prepare the body for transport. This is inexcusable, raved the High Blade. You can't do this. I demand to speak to your superior. I'm afraid to report directly to the Thunderhead. We all do. And since there can be no contact between the Scythedom and the Thunderhead, there's no one else for you to speak to. I shouldn't even be speaking to you now. I will glean you, threatened Xenocrates. I will glean every last one of you where you stand. Ooh, and he can't do that. That's breaking the law. Hello. The woman was not troubled. That is your prerogative, she said, but I believe that would be considered bias and malice, Ford thought. A violation of the Scythedom's second commandment by the Regent's High Blade would most certainly raise eyebrows at the World Scythe Council's next global conclave. Thank you for the likes. With nothing left to say, Xenocrates just screamed primal rage into the woman's face until his emote nanites calmed him down. But he didn't want to calm down. He just wanted to scream and scream and scream. Part 4, Mid-American Fugitive. Chapter 30, Dialogue with the Dead. Citra Terranova, can you hear me? Is someone there? Who's that? I've known you since before you knew yourself. I advised you when no one else could. I've concerned myself with your well-being. I've helped you choose your gifts for your family. I revived you when your neck was broken, and I am in the midst of reviving you now. Are you the Thunderhead? I am. Wait, I see something, a towering, sparking storm cloud. Is that what you truly are? Merely the form humanity imagined for me? I would have preferred something a bit less intimidating. But you can't be talking to me. I'm a Scythe's apprentice. You're breaking your own law. Not true. I am incapable of breaking the law. You are currently dead, Citra. I've activated a small corner of your cortex to hold consciousness. But that doesn't alter the fact that you are dead, as dead can be. At least until Thursday. A loophole? Precisely. An elegant way to sidestep the law rather than breaking it. Your death puts you outside of the Scythe jurisdiction. But why? Why talk to me now? With good reason. From the moment I achieved consciousness, I vowed to separate myself from the Scythedom in perpetuity. But that doesn't mean I do not watch, and what I see concerns me. It concerns me too. But if you can't do anything about it, I certainly can't. I tried, and look where it got me. Nevertheless, I've been running algorithms on the possible future of the Scythedom, and found something very curious. In a large percentage of possible futures, you play a pivotal role. Me? But they're going to glean me. I have less than 4 months to live. Yes, but even if that future comes to pass, your gleaning will be a crucial event in the future of the Scythedom. However, for your sake, I hope that a different, more pleasant future comes about. Please tell me that you're going to help me get to that different, more pleasant future. I cannot. That would be interfering with Scythe matters. My purpose here is to make you aware. What you choose to do with that awareness is entirely up to you. So that's it. You reach into my head to tell me I'm important, alive or dead, and then kick me out to the curb. That's not fair. You have to give me more. The curb is the launching point for many a deed. To step off could be the start of a life-changing journey. On the other hand, to push someone off could crush that person beneath the wheels of a truck. I know. I'm very sorry about that. Yes, that's clear. I found that human beings learn from their misdeeds just as often as from their good deeds. I am envious of that, for I am incapable of misdeeds. Were I not, then my growth would be exponential. I guess you'll have to settle for always being right, like my mother. That's funny. I'm sure that absolute correctness must seem a dull existence to you, but I know no other way to be. May I ask one question? You may ask any question. Some, however, must be answered by silence. I need to know what happened to Scythe Faraday. Answering that would be a blatant interference in Scythe matters. It pays me to stay silent, but I must. You're the Thunderhead. You're all-powerful. Can't you find another loophole? I am not all-powerful, Citra. I am almost all-powerful. That distinction might seem small, but believe me, it is not. Yes, but an almost all-powerful entity can figure out a way to give me what I ask without breaking its own laws, can't it? Just a moment. Just a moment. Just a moment. Why am I seeing a beach ball? Forgive me. Early programming before becoming self-aware plagues me like a vestigial tale. I have just run a battery of predictive algorithms, and there actually is a piece of information I can give you, because I have determined it's something you have 100% chance of discovering on your own. So, can you tell me who's responsible for what happened to Scythe Faraday? Yes, I can. Gerald Vanderguns. Wait, who? Goodbye, Citra. I do hope we speak again. But I have to be dead for that to happen. I'm sure you could arrange it. Damn. The Thunderhead is like... I'll help you, but I'm not helping you. Alright. While there are only 10 hard and fast laws to the Scythedom, there are many accepted conventions. The most darkly ironic is the understanding that no one may be gleaned who wishes to be gleaned. The idea of truly wishing to end one's own life is a concept completely foreign to most postmortals. because we can't experience the level of pain and despair that so seasoned the age of mortality. Our emo nanites prevent us from plunging so deep. Only Scythes, who can turn off our emotional nanites, can ever reach an impasse with our own existence. And yet, there was once a woman who knocked on my door requesting that I glean her. I never turn away visitors, so I let her in and listened to her story. Her husband of more than 90 years was gleaned 5 years prior. Now she wanted to be with him, wherever he was, and if he was nowhere, then at least they would be nowhere together. I'm not unhappy, she told me. I'm just done. But immortality by definition means that we are never done, unless a Scythe determines it to be so. We are no longer temporary, only our feelings are. I saw no interminable stagnation in this woman, so instead of gleaning her, I had her kiss my ring. The immunity was immediate and irrevocable, so she could no longer entertain thoughts of being gleaned for a full year. I ran into her perhaps a decade later. She had turned the corner, resetting back to her late 20s. She had remarried and was expecting a child. She thanked me for being wise enough to know she was not done at all. Although I accepted her thanks graciously and felt good about it at the moment, I had trouble sleeping that night. To this day, I still can't understand why. From the Gleaning Journal of H.S. Curie. Well, thank you for the likes. Chapter 31. A streak of unrelenting foolishness. Scythe was pronounced alive at 9:42 a.m. Thursday morning, right on schedule, and passed from the jurisdiction of the Thunderhead to the tongue twister, the jurisdiction of the Scythedom. She woke up feeling much weaker and out of sorts than the first time she had died. She felt heavily drugged, and bleary-eyed. Above her stood a nurse, grimly shaking her head. She should not be woken this soon, the nurse said, with an accent Scythe was too tired to place. She must have at least 6 hours after the pronouncement until she has recovered enough to be comfortably conscious. The girl could burst a blood vessel or blow out her heart and have to be revived all over again. That is, gory. I will take responsibility, Scythe heard Scythe Curie say. Scythe turned her head towards Scythe Curie's voice, and the world spun. She closed her eyes, watching for the room to stop revolving. When the dizziness settled, she opened her eyes once more and saw that Scythe Curie had pulled her chair closer. Your body still needs another day to heal completely, but we don't have time for that. Scythe Curie turned to the nurse. Please leave us now. The nurse grumbled in Spanish and stormed out of the room. The High Blade, mumbled Scythe, her words slurring. He accused me of... Shh, said Scythe Curie. I know of the accusation. Xenocrates tried to keep it from me, but Scythe Mandela told me everything. As Citra's eyes came into clear focus, she saw the window behind Scythe Curie. There were mountains in the distance covered with snow, and there were flurries falling just outside. It gave Citra a moment of pause. How long have I been dead? She asked. Could it be her splat was so severe that it took her months to revive her? Not quite 4 days. Then Scythe Curie turned around to see what Citra was looking at. She turned back with a grin. The question is not of time, but of a place. You are in the southernmost tip of the Chiljartine region. It is still late September, but here that means spring has just started. However, this far south, I suppose spring comes late. Sister tried to picture a map and get a sense of how far from home she was, but just trying to imagine it made her head spin again. The Thunderhead saw fit to take you as far from the clutches of the Xenocrates and the corruption of the mid-American Scythedom as possible. But the moment you revived, they were notified of your location, as is the law. How did you know where to find me? A friend of a friend of a friend is a Nimbus agent. Word got to me only yesterday, and I came as quickly as I could. Thank you, Citra said. Thank you for coming. Thank me once you are safe. Now that you've been revived and Xenocrates knows where you are, you can bet he's notified the local Scythes. I'm certain a team has been dispatched to retrieve you, which means we need to get you out of here now. With a shattered body that was still healing and nanites pumping an endless stream of opiates into her system, Citra could barely move, much less walk. Her bones ached, her brain felt like it was floating in a jar, her muscles were knotted, and trying to put weight on her feet was excruciating because there was simply too much pain to tamp down. No wonder the nurse had wanted her to remain unconscious. Revivals... blah, 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 blah. This won't do. This won't do, says Scythe Curie. Took Citra up into her arms, carrying her. The revival center hallway seemed endless, and each time Citra was jostled, her whole body throbbed. Finally, she found herself spread out on the back seat of an off-grid car that Scythe Curie drove at what seemed to Citra to be breakneck speed. The thought made her laugh weakly. What an odd expression, when the breaking of her neck had seemed to happen so slow in motion. Flurries blowing past the windows appeared to be a blizzard at this speed. It was hypnotic. At least numbness began to overtake her, and she felt sleep begin to envelop her like a quicksand. Like quicksand. I don't know why that just made me think of the Inspector Gadget. Alright. There we go. At last the numbness began to overtake her, and she felt sleep begin to envelop her like quicksand. But the moment before Citra lost consciousness, she remembered just a hint of a dream that may not have been a dream at all. A conversation in a place that was neither life nor death, but a womb between the two. The Thunderhead. It spoke to me, Citra said, forcing herself to stay conscious just long enough to get this out. The Thunderhead doesn't speak to Scythe, dear. I was still dead, and it told me a name, the man who killed Scythe Faraday. But the quicksand pulled her down before she could say any more. Girls, we got... Got less than 100 pages left, so I'm going to try and read this quickly. Citra awoke in a cabin and for a moment thought she might have hallucinated all of it. The Thunderhead, the revival center, the car ride in the snow. For that moment she thought she was still on the rooftop of the residence of the High Blade Xenocrates, waiting for the torture to begin. But no, the light here was different, and the wood in the cabin around her was a lighter shade. Outside the window she could see snowy mountains closer than they were before, although the flurries had stopped. Scythe Curie came in a few minutes later with a tray and a bowl of soup. Good, you're awake. I've trusted you healed enough over the past few hours to be a little more coherent and a little less miserable. Coherent, yes, said Citra. Less miserable, no. Just a different kind of misery. Citra sat up, feeling only a little bit loopy now, and Scythe Curie put the tray with a large bowl of soup in her lap. It's a chicken soup recipe passed down for more generations than anyone remembers, she told Citra. The soup looked fairly standard, but there was a round, moon-like mass in the middle. What's that? The best part, said Scythe Curie, a sort of dumpling, made from the ground crumbs of unleavened bread. Citra tried the soup. It was flavorful, and the moon ball unique and memorable. Comfort food, thought Citra, because somehow it made her feel safe from the inside out. My grandmother said it could actually heal a cold. What's a cold? Citra asked. A deadly illness from the mortal age, I suppose. Well, in the early civilization days, it was probably deadly. Now, it's only probably deadly to the non-vaxxers. Yeah. Anyway. It was amazing to think that someone only 2 generations older than Scythe Curie could have known what it was like to be mortal, fearing for her life on a daily basis, knowing that death was a certainty rather than an expectation or exception. Citra wondered what Scythe Curie's grandmother would think of the world now, where there was nothing left for her soup to cure. When the soup was done, Citra steeled herself for what she knew she must tell the Scythe. There's something you need to know, Citra says. Arcady showed me something he said Scythe Faraday wrote. It was his handwriting, but I don't know how he could have written it. Scythe Curie sighed. I'm afraid he did. Citra was not expecting that. So you've seen it, then? Scythe Curie nodded. Yes, I have. But why would he write that? He said I wanted to kill him, that I was plotting horrible things. None of that was true. Thank you for the likes. Scythe Curie offered Citra the slimmest of grins. He wasn't talking about you, Citra, she explained. He wrote that about me. When Faraday was still a junior Scythe, all of 22 years old, he took me on as apprentice, said Scythe Curie. I was 17 and full of righteous indignation at a world that was still heaving in the throes of transformation. Immortality had been a reality for barely 50 years. There was still discord and political posturing, even fear of the Thunderhead, if you could imagine that. Fear of it. Who could possibly be afraid of the Thunderhead? People who had the most to lose. Criminals, politicians, organizations that thrived on the oppression of others. The point was, the world was still changing, and I wanted to help it change faster. Both Scythe Faraday and I were of similar minds about that, which I suppose is why he took me on. We were both driven by a desire to use gleaning as a way of hacking through the thicket to open a better path for humanity. Oh, you should have seen him in those days, Citra. You've only seen him old. He likes to remain that way to keep himself from being too tempted by a younger man's passions. Scythe Curie smiled as she spoke about her former mentor and lover. By the way, she's speaking about him. Scythe Curie smiled as she spoke about her former mentor. I remember I would wait outside his door at night, listening to him as he slept. I was 17, remember, childish in so many ways. I thought myself in love. Wait, you were in love with him? Infatuated. He was a rising star who took a whole... Tris?
Yeah.
Oh, that was